Hi, welcome to my home studio today. I am in my husband's sculpture shop doing some encaustic painting, and I wanted to do a follow-up on my compatible materials with encaustic video because that one was so popular, and there's so many more materials that you can use with encaustic. So I've got a few materials in front of me, and we're gonna use them on this little painting here. So let's go. All right, so the first media that I wanted to talk about is how to use, I think I've probably done this before in other videos, but how to use stencils. And I've often used store-bought stencils, but I've recently started using mylar, this plastic, clear plastic. It's like shiny, smooth mylar for making my own stencils. And that's cool because I can get different shapes, I can get different sizes, and for instance, this little house shape I have been using a lot. So I'm gonna cut it out of the mylar, and you can cut pretty much any shape just like you would a normal stencil. And I'm gonna position it. I've got some some encaustic medium on my hot plate over here. And I'm just going to spread it out over the stencil. And just like most stencils, you don't want to fuss too much. You want to just kind of get it on. Otherwise, the edges have a tendency to kind of bleed out. With wax, that's not too big of an issue. I'll show you how to kind of straighten them out. But you want to make sure you peel the stencil off while the wax is still warm. If you peel it off while it's cool, then chances are you'll pull the stencil out along with your the paint along with your stencil. And to get this the wax off of your stencil, what I do is either put it in the fridge or outside on a cold day, and that will just cracks off, and you don't have to worry about heating it up and melting it off. And you'll see this area that was a little bit raised up because the stencil was kind of thick here. I had some already built up wax. So when I peeled it off, it got a little bit jaggedy. So to fix that, I take this loop tool that I got from the ceramic store, which works really well on wax, on encaustic. And I just scrape back. And I've got a whole video about scraping and incising and how to actually remove the wax. So if this seems intriguing, then you can check that out. So you just kind of, and they make these in different shapes. Can scrape a little bit of that chunky part off. And get some of this. There we go. And then I just fuse. So I can use my torch and just lightly fuse, because if it's too hot, then it'll start to bleed. What you really want is just for the wax to melt into the previous layer. So I keep it on low heat and just sort of dab it. Go up and down. And that's melted in. So I could just continue to do that. I could put more layers on. I could do a darker kind of version. Let's see if I wanted to do maybe a littler one or a bigger one. I'll make it more transparent, but a little bit of a darker value. That sounds like fun. Okay, just mixing up my colors over here. And now we're gonna get totally different look over here. And peel off your stencil like fact, I think I might do another one right here with that same color only. Make it a little bit shorter. And you can notice how my brush is going in different directions. That's to kind of go with the direction of the stencil, because sometimes, yeah, if you go into it, it'll bleed out from underneath. But again, I can use a small loop tool if I want to be really precise. Carve away that edge. There we go. I'll get in there. Not just for ceramics. The surface of the encaustic is so pliable. I love it. So forgiving. And the warmer it is, the easier it is to scrape, but that also means that you might remove more than you want. For instance, I got a little bit of that lighter gray layer. So being patient, you know, waiting till things cool is often a good way to go. And then just fuse that layer. So I want to wait till it cools to do anything else on top of that. If I put medium on, it might smear. And if I try to put more paint or anything on, it could also kind of bleed into it. So I'll move on to another painting and show you one of my other newfound materials, which are posca pens, these acrylic posca pens. And you wouldn't think that acrylic would be compatible with encaustic, but amazingly these posca pens are. So here I've got some of my stencils, and I've started a layer of the pens, and you can see right here they're not shiny, so they're kind of a matte finish, and when I run my hand over them, they don't wipe off. I can kind of lick my finger and they still don't wipe off. So even though they're acrylic, which normally would mean that they wouldn't be compatible, they would kind of bead up, the water-based material would bead up on the surface of the wax, and the wax would repel the water, because whatever they put in them, they can, once they're dried, you don't have to worry about, you know, removing them. You could scratch them off, but you can't wipe them off. And once they're dry, you can just lightly fuse, just like we did with the stencil. So I'll show you. See, I've got this gray. They come in different widths or thicknesses. They come in like really huge. This is like a medium size, and lots of really cool bright colors, which I love. So because they're liquid, you have to shake them up and then make sure that the paint is flowing down into the nib. When you first get them, you'll have to kind of poke them onto a surface. And then I can just write with them, you know, over the wax. And it's cool because you can layer, right? So I've got a layer underneath, and now I'm layering up on top. And then once they're dry, I'm going to wait till that's dry, but I'll show you what this does when we fuse it. All these materials you just lightly fuse, just to embed them into the wax surface. if you get too aggressive, they'll start to move along the surface, and you don't want that. They'll just sort of float and break apart. So we'll have to wait till that's dry, but I thought I would try these just one day, and amazingly they work, and I love them because they're colorful, and I like the mechanical line to the painted line, or it's a lot different than your oil pastels, which are more smeary. So that marker kind of gives us a different look. And then another material that I really like, that is pretty versatile with Encaustic, is the ink. It's waterproof ink, and this is made by Speedball. You can use it with a pen nib as long as the surface is fairly cool, so you don't want it to be soft or warm at all. And you can just use it with a brush. You can use it, I like to shake it up first. You shake it up. And you can use different colors of ink too. It doesn't have to be black. It's the standard, but you know, you fill your pen nib with ink, and you can make sure it's flowing on another surface if you want, or you can just start kind of going. And these, of course, come in different tips. You can do sort of calligraphy. You can do non-traditional drawing, ink drawing. They're really cool. And again, you want to wait until they're dry before you fuse. Let's just try a little bit on here for a contrast. All right, and then the way that I clean these is just wiping them and then putting them in a little bit of water before they're like hard. Let's see, I have a little brush too. Let's try it with the brush because that's kind of cool. I wouldn't advise trying to wipe the ink while it's wet. I'll show you down here. I mean, it will kind of wipe off, but it stains it too. So, I mean, you can try it if you're not concerned about what it's going to turn out like. See this one? Kind of rub it, but it does stain and dry, and dry very quickly. So if you start with something that you don't really care about, you can always, of course, scrape it back if you don't like it. Just scrape that part off. I mean, it might be your whole process where you put it down, smear it, and then scrape it back. I don't know. But that is the India ink, or the permanent ink, waterproof ink. And now we've got to let this dry. You can see why I work on multiple pieces at once. Let's go up this way. All right, so the last compatible material I wanted to talk about is, and these are all kind of liquidy too, I've noticed today, is alcohol ink. And these are all the rage right now. They come in different colors. Let's try maybe a pink. And again, you can use a brush. I just squirt out a little bit. And because they're thinned with alcohol, they are compatible with the Encaustic. So they'll go on and look just like watercolor, but they definitely have permanence, right? They're not going to bead up like watercolor would. This is the extender. So the extender is supposed to make it kind of more transparent. Let's see. I just dabbed that on. I have a brush here. Just a little brush. They make a cleaner, like a cleanser that you can use. And that's really, really bright. It's like day glow pink. Well, we'll see. Oh yeah. So as soon as you paint it on, it's there. Right? So you can kind of move it around a little bit. And same with the India inks. If you blot it, you can kind of pull. Oops, I have some India ink on it. You can kind of pull it up, but you can wipe it more than you can the ink. So before it dries, I don't have to scrape off. Or just cover over it, I guess, with some more. There we go. The beauty of encaustic. Let's try a different color. This is very, very bright. Let's add a little bit of greenish. Oh, that's pretty. There we go. So you can get really watery kind of effects. Let's try it on here. And it's not gonna, wipe off on you. And it just sits on the surface of that encaustic. There you go. And it cleans up with alcohol, so you can get the cleaner, or you can get, I'll just use regular rubbing alcohol. 1 and 2. And again, just like the India ink, you have to wait till it's dry to fuse it. There we go. So that is pretty much it. We'll have to wait till that dries to fuse. And, try mixing them, try doing different totally crazy things, putting them on, wiping them off, see what happens. I love the liquidity of the alcohol ink. See if you can see that sort of softness. But that is Compatible Materials Part 2. See you next time.